It is not often that we get a good free champion inside Raid Shadow Legends, of course, and we had one of the best, I believe it was late last year, if I'm not mistaken, in Sun Wukong, the Monkey King himself, that you could actually get for free just by simply logging into the game, which was pretty awesome. And not only that, but new players can still get him these days, so he is an incredibly relevant champion even still. So we're going to be talking about him today, how to build him, and some technical stuff to go along with it. Let's go ahead and let's hop in and take a look at his kit and why is he so good. He has an A1, attacks one enemy, has a 50% chance of placing a stun for one turn. The chance increases to 75% if the target has any buffs, which is absolutely insane. I forgot to turn on my light apparently, so I looked a little weird, but there we go. Excuse me. He has an A2, and this is really the bread and butter of his kit. Staff of Wonder, 3-turn cooldown, attacks one enemy, will ignore 50% of the target's defense. This is absolutely insane. Of course, if you have him built out inside lethal like we do today, he's going to ignore additional 25%, so that's already a 75% defense ignore, and with Masteries you can get this up to almost a true damage skill. However, he also attacks all remaining enemies with any surplus damage if the target is killed. This attack will also ignore 50% of the target's defense. This attack cannot be critical. If the initial target survives, places a sheep debuff on them for one turn. This debuff cannot be blocked, so that means that it's going to go through block debuffs, and you would think that it's going to go through stone skin, but it still seems to be kind of a 50-50. He does, excuse me, he does require accuracy to do this, of course. And the one thing that kind of tripped me up when I was initially building him is this right here. So where it says this attack cannot be critical. So I took that as it meaning that overall this skill cannot be critical. So I essentially just built him with a crap ton of attack, and I was wondering why he wasn't doing, much damage or anything. But it turns out the first part here is what's critical, and then the second part is what cannot be critical. And I know that might be simplistic, or that might be not surprising for some of you guys, but I read the kit wrong essentially when looking at it first. Now, his A1 does have a 3.5 times attack multiplier, so that's the stun inducing skill here, which is a very solid damage multiplier. However, his Staff of Wonder has a 5 times damage multiplier, which is absolutely insane, especially considering this guy's base stats are very solid at 1500 attack. Now, anything around a 6 times multiplier is considered a godlike damage skill for single target damage, and that's if it doesn't even have built-in ignoring defense. So considering that you're ignoring 50% of the target's defense with a 5 times attack multiplication skill is just absolutely astronomical. This guy can put out so much damage on your team. You generally want to try and target the champions on the enemy team that are low max HP, so that you can essentially just absolutely hammer them. So for example, if they have a Trunda or a Georgid or another Sun Wukong on the enemy team, those sorts of champions are what you want to target because you'll absolutely hammer them. They have low defense, and then any of that surplus damage, of course, is going to go ahead and just spread out to the rest of the team. So I've had this guy so many times in live arena. Essentially just everybody on my team dies except Sun Wukong, and for example UDK to help keep him alive, right? Because we'll get to that in his kit soon. And then he absolutely decimates everybody like a Nishak or something like that, spreads that damage, and everybody gets tapped down. I've had him one-shot Taurus teams, which is absolutely insane considering Taurus is passive. I've had him just one-shot some of the tankiest Duchesses in the game. He is absolutely insane. Now, enough about his A2. Let's go ahead and take a look at the A3. Now you see us, 3-turn cooldown, AoE, before attacking steals all buffs, then places a block buffs on them for 2 turns. This has a 3.8 times damage multiplier, so it's still a relatively decent AoE skill. However, it doesn't have any built-in ignore defense or anything like that, so you're not necessarily depending on it as much as you are with his A2, right? Lastly, his passive is very simple. Unbeatable Wukong revives this champion with 100% HP and 100% turn meter 3 turns after they were killed. Now, the only way to get around this is to have a block revive on your team. You might be thinking that somebody like a Lydia could work with her passive. She does, but only temporarily. Essentially, as soon as those 3 turns are done again, he's going to be coming back, and this counts enemy turns as well as your turn. So for example, if they have a mythical champion, or if you have a mythical champion, and they metamorph into their secondary form, that's technically going to count as 2 turns because the metamorph is giving them an extra turn, so it counts as a turn. So some of my favorite strategies with this guy is I'll go in, I'll nuke somebody, he gets killed, and then I have, say, a Crixia or a Mikage on my team, I'll metamorph, I'll go ahead and do a skill, and then he's just 1 turn from getting brought back, which is absolutely fantastic. And again, the only thing you really have to be careful about with this is block revive champions. So some of the most notable examples would be Queen Ava, for example, or Nice from the Sylvan Watchers faction. Another thing that will actually counter him is block passive skills. So a lot of times you'll see Rhonda run against him because she does have that A2 that has the block passive skills that goes on him. And then he can't actually revive himself if he dies with the block passive skills on there, but he can still be brought back by a normal reviver, of course. Lastly, we have an ally speed in arena battles by 28%. This is one of the strongest auras that we have in the game for arena. I believe the strongest currently is going to be, of course, Odin, but his speed aura is 40%, and it's only for Void champions. And then I think the strongest non-Void is going to be 32%, if I'm not mistaken. We might have a 35% now as well, but essentially, for a non-Void legendary champion, 28% is one of the strongest auras that you can have for the arena. And I do have him built out in Intimidating Presence, because he is one of the highest awakened champions on my team. And having him weaken the enemy's aura and then strengthening your aura is absolutely insane as well. We're going to talk about blessings. If you're not running him in Intimidating Presence, what would I recommend for really long and prolonged battles? You could use something like a Nature's Wrath, for example, if you're running him in Hydra, because he does place a decent amount of debuffs. Granted, the only debuff he's really placing in Hydra is, of course, the block buffs, but he is very useful for that. If you have him 6-star awakened, Crushing Rend would be absolutely insane on it. And I think it would be very solid. If you have him built out with accuracy, you could consider placing him inside Polymorph as well. We'll go over my build here momentarily. I did run him in Polymorph for a decent amount of time. And then, of course, Cruelty would be insane as well. He's doing AoE. He has the potential to do extra spread AoE on his A2, right? So there's potential for a lot of damage in there. Phantom Touch would be a very solid choice as well, because Phantom Touch essentially just gives you a second instance of damage, and that damage scales off of the champion's attack, as it mentions here. So a champion like him that's built with insanely high attack would be a very solid way to do it. And then lastly, of course, if you have him built inside Stone Skin for the arena or something like that, just for an example, Lightning Cage would be a very solid way to build him, because Lightning Cage is essentially just going to ensure that your Stone Skin doesn't have the 50-50 chance of getting stolen. So there's a lot of blessings you can run this guy in. You could, of course, feel free to run him inside Soul Reap as well, though I think Sun Wukong running him inside Soul Reap is kind of just massively overrated. The reason being, with his A2, he does so damn much damage anyways, that he doesn't really need Soul Reap to make that even more useful, right? So he can essentially just tap people down without a problem. Now let's go ahead and let's take a look at his masteries first, actually. So as you can see over here, I have him built inside Helm Smasher, which has a 50% chance of ignoring 25% of the target's defense. So again, if you remember his A2, ignores 50% defense. I have him built inside Lethal, which ignores 25% of defense, and then we have Helm Smasher. So if this procs, he is doing true damage on his A2, which is incredibly strong. And then not only that, of course, with his A3 and his A1, he's doing 50% ignore defense if this procs, 25% consistently if not. So this guy is so incredibly strong. For masteries, there's a few ways you can run him. So you can run him in the counterattack masteries from the defense tree. I do have him built out inside the support tree with sniper, so I don't know why I have this, in all honesty. It does not increase your chance of placing stun. And then everything else he can place is on 100% clip rate, so I don't know why I got Sniper. I do have Evil Eye, though, so I can decrease turn meter. I have Lore of Steel to give us some increases to those base stats. And then I have Swarm Smiter, I have Charged Focus, and I have Pinpoint Accuracy to try and get him more accuracy. What I should have went with instead is Master Hexer. I don't think I do have a free reset, so I'll probably come and rework him at some point. Now, on the offensive side, a few things I want to recommend is Heart of Glory. The reason for that being, he does revive himself with full HP, right? So increasing his damage when attacking with full HP is very strong. Of course, you want Keen Strike and then kind of Whirlwind of Death to give him more damage over time. And then Ruthless Ambush is very good as well. A lot of times with Sun Wukong teams, you're not really going, excuse me, multiple turns. You're essentially just hitting them and killing everybody, so having that first turn damage is very, very strong. And finally, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at this guy's build. So this is the total stats that we have on him here. 47,000 HP, 6,400, almost 6,500 attack, one of the best builds on my account, 2,800 defense, 291 on the speed. If I were to critique this build, I'd give him more speed and more accuracy. We have 101 and then 299 on the crit rate and crit damage, respectively. 235 resistance, he's not resisting anyone, and then 334 on the accuracy. So a very, very solid build. For the gear pieces, I do have a very nice feral piece on him. It's not min-maxed. I always say this, right? This gear could be so much better if you have better rolls. I have feral, though, because the one-piece set bonus gives him an additional 40 accuracy, which is huge. You do want accuracy on him for his sheep, and then for his buff steel as well. We have a crit damage with Attack Ascension Amulet with some accuracy on there. We have a triple speed attack banner, which if you re-roll this into attack, you'd be even stronger, of course. If it was a legendary piece and we had a quad roll of speed, that'd be nice, or an attack roll would be very nice as well. Crit damage Ascension Gauntlets. This is pretty much what you're wanting. Attack with defense Ascension Chestplate. That's not necessarily what you want on him. Of course, he would be better built out if this was an attack Ascension. But essentially, at the time, I ran out of the Chaos Dust to try and rework it. So I was like, you know what the hell, defense percent is better than like flat HP or something like that, in my opinion. We have speed with Speed Ascension Boots. If you're strictly just looking for as much DPS as possible and you don't necessarily worry too much about how fast he goes, you could replace this with attack percentage Speed Ascension and then some speed substats. He does have a defense and a flat HP roll here, so again, this gear is far from min-maxed, right? We have a very nice lethal weapon here. If that wasn't resistance, it would be even better. We got some crit damage, flat attack. Again, if you had like attack percentage here, just massively better piece. Triple roll here. This is basically as good as you're getting for a shield. The only way it would be slightly better is if this HP was like accuracy or resistance, preferably accuracy though, because you can't actually roll attack percentage on shields. If you didn't know that, now you do. So let's go ahead and let's do some damage testing on this guy as well, so you can kind of get an idea of what he's going to be used for. He is a Spirit Affinity champion, so he is going to be weak affinity against magic, so we'll go ahead and we'll run him against stage 21 here, and we'll show you what he's capable of. So we'll kind of just do the regular damage testing where we bring an Arbiter in to give him the increased attack. We're then going to bring our Lydia in for decreased defense and weaken, and that should be it. So let's go ahead and take a look at what he can do here. This is kind of my favorite place to do damage testing with champions, just because it's very consistent to see what champions are capable of inside PvE content. So we got decreased defense and weaken across the board, pretty much except for this guy who doesn't have the weaken. We're going to go ahead and test his A1 here. So as you can see, 120k on an A1 hit with this build is certainly nothing to sneeze at. We're going to go ahead and just do another hit here on this champion. And then we have Sun Wukong going next. We're going to go ahead and test his A3. He has that buff steel, block buffs, boom, AoE for about 120k there across the board. And we did actually take down a couple of them. And now finally, we're going to go ahead and we're going to test his A2 as well, the big money skill that everybody's going to love. So keep in mind, with PvE scenarios or settings, they have a crap ton of stats. So they have a lot of defense, they have a lot of HP, so the damage we do might not look that impressive in PvE, but we'll hop over to PvP and show you some of that stuff as well. We'll go ahead and attack this champion here, one-time speed, boom! 286 initially to her, and then about 250k to everybody else. We didn't hit this champion here hard enough to kill him, but that is absolutely insane. Almost 300k on some of the residual damage there. Absolutely taking them out without question. And Sun Wukong is so incredibly strong even in today's meta, because you have champions like Siegfried, who's of course reviving and then placing the block damage, so having the strip can help out with that. Same thing with Odin, right? Having the champion that can strip is going to be so strong against that as well. In fact, we're going to try to go against this team here and see what we can make happen. This team does seem to be pretty strong in terms of the champions they have, at least. Doesn't look like they're incredibly strong in terms of build quality, just because, as you can see, their turn meters are not very high, so they don't have much in terms of stats. We're going to go ahead and we're going to hit into the Freya here, since she is weak affinity to us. We could also do Loki since he's neutral, but boom! And we take out everybody without an issue, and we actually burst through the stone skin on the Odin as well, which is absolutely insane. Now, as soon as we get a turn with Sun Wukong, Odin is out of here as well. We can just go ahead and we can A1 him down as soon as we get that turn. Boom! 95k almost on the A1 there is incredible. I've dropped down a little bit inside the classic arena, so we're probably not going to see too strong of teams here. We'll go against something like this. I think we'll definitely have the speed to take them out. You'll see that we have Taurus, and then we also have Duchess, who are two incredibly tanky champions. So we'll see kind of what we can do. And then we do have Gergo the Augur, who we can essentially target with Sun Wukong to do big damage. Now let's go ahead and let's take a look at what we can make happen here. We're going to go on 1-time speed, and boom! We just take out everybody except the Taurus. And I think the only reason the Taurus is not dead is just because of his stone skin, of course. Now Gergo is very annoying placing those freezes on us, but we will cycle through our turns here eventually anyways. We're going to hopefully take that stone skin off the Taurus there. Let's just go ahead and let's metamorph, and then let's go ahead and do a skill reset here, just so we have everything available if we want to use it. Our Arbiter sadly gets taken out. We do have a decreased defense and a weaken on the Taurus now, and boom, 97k. We don't care about Taurus. We don't care about his passive. We are just going to absolutely go ahead and shred him. We'll try a team like this with their 930k team power. I hope I'm able to go first, because it didn't look like we had a speed aura on this team. It looked like resistance or something crazy like that, so I should be able to outspeed them, hopefully. This team, excuse me, looks absolutely insane. We do outspeed them without too much issue there. Let's go ahead and increase everybody's cooldowns, which we do, which is nice. We're going to get that decreased defense and weaken on them as well. Everybody resists it, or except the Crixia, so let's go ahead and take her out. Boom! And we can't one-shot the Galathier because he does have a passive, but we do burst through the stone skin on the Carnage. And I know that this guy has a fairly strong account, because if he didn't, he wouldn't have Carnage. I don't actually have Carnage yet myself. I haven't been able to consistently farm inside the city of Centranos enough, so this guy's got quite a roster to push him through. And again, an almost 1 million player power is just absolutely insane. We still took down Galathier to like half HP though, and considering his base stats, I'm guessing he probably has like 140k HP, and then I would say probably like 5,000 defense on that particular build, especially considering he's 6-star awakened, which is absolutely insane. This is a crazy account. Overall player power, which you can't really see, but it's 46 million for comparison. Mine is at, I think, like 16, so that is a crazy team. Let's go ahead. Let's hit the refresh here. Something like this is a perfect showcase of Sun Wukong's abilities, because you're going to see some less tanky champions that we can do some damage against. So as long as we go first, which it looks like we do, we will be off to the races. Now, everybody does get their cooldowns increased, except Arbiter, so she does boost, but that doesn't really matter. We're going to go ahead and we're going to hit Nishak, and everybody's dead. Simple as that. 371k damage to some of those champions. There's not really a way you can survive that. The only way, or the only real counters to Sun Wukong that you have to be careful of is, of course, block revive. Block damage is going to counter his A2. We have this team right here, which is basically built out perfectly to counter Sun Wukong. So you have UDK, who's going to eat the hits, and then you have Harima, who's decreasing the ignore defense effects by 50%. So especially if you're going against a team that has Harima and UDK both on it, your Sun Wukong is going to do very, very little damage, which is a shame. So just try and avoid these two champions, especially if you're going in live arena. Otherwise, it's going to be a very prolonged fight. And, you know, it is what it is. And then we mentioned Soul Reap being a bit of a waste on Sun Wukong. Harima is another reason of that. So Harima basically just completely counters Soul Reap, and she'll keep your team alive, even if they would have got Soul Reaped by, you know, the Reaper. So just a few technical aspects about his kit to consider and ways to counter him and all that sort of good stuff. Let me know down below, though, what your Sun Wukong build is looking like. I'd be very excited to hear it. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.